Welcome back to Political Buzz. We're talking about the Boy Scouts of America and the challenges and the values that they hold. The Boy Scouts locally, first of all, nationally, is it all the same things that we face here in Western New York? Is it, or are there different problems here in Western New York than national faces across the country?
The challenges we face in Western New York are very similar across the country in terms of the competition for the interest of the kids and the parents' time as well, because parents need to participate with their son. So I don't think there's a huge difference. There may be some more strong political leanings in particularly some of the urban cores of the U.S., but in general, I think the challenges that scouting faces are the same across the country.
Demone, you were talking about the skills that are taught sometimes in the younger kids. The Cub Scouts have the Pinewood Derby. We hold it actually out here in the Eastern Hills Mall every year. And they put together cars and have to engineer speed into the cars. It's a real competition, and they really get enthused about it. Is that part of the fun?
Yeah, it's part of the fun because what you do is you get the kids a block of wood, and then you tell them, all right, design the car out of it. We're going to draw on it, carve it out, paint it, put wheels on it, and race it. And so they look at it, and then they're like, oh, okay. And then eventually the sense of accomplishments when they finish it, even if they don't even win a race, but they've seen them go from point A all the way to point Z, and they feel really good about themselves and seeing that they accomplished something. But that's just part of what scouting does. There's so many other projects that do the same thing, like the Pinewood Derby. It takes kids here and brings them here, and it makes them a total different person when you start to show them that you can do this, you can be accomplished, you can start something, and you can finish it.
Russell, some of the activities that Scouts participate in Western New York, there's several camps, Shelkoff and Scout Haven. Camping is part of the equation. The meetings are part of the equation. What kind of activities does scouting bring to the boys through the ages? Starting with Cub Scouts and going up, to the ranks of the Eagle Scout, potential.
Well, in scouting, we use the outdoor program really as a framework to teach these life lessons, very much like the Pinewood Derby car. So we know that if we approach a young boy and say we're going to develop your character, he's not really going to want to engage in the program. So in the outdoor program, what we do is that we start out with our Cub Scouts, which are 1st through 5th grade, and the activities are really centered around the family, and they'll do an overnight perhaps. I've got 2 Cub Scout age sons myself, and we're actually going to be going to the Buffalo Zoo for a zoo snooze next weekend, and so that'll be one of the fun things that we get to do. But then as those young men get older and they start in the 6th grade, they become Boy Scouts, and it goes on through their high school years. They really start to learn programs where they learn to be independent. We teach them how to be able to take care of themselves in a wilderness situation where they can learn what plants are safe to eat, they can learn what plants to avoid, they can learn how they can build a fire and cook for themselves. And all along, and so a boy is very interested in how do I build a fire, and we teach it all to them along with the responsibility that goes with that knowledge. But what happens, and you see it every time when that young man is able to accomplish that, it's that sense of accomplishment that Demone talked about, and so they build up their self-confidence, they build up their self-worth, and through that, they then become more able to take on additional responsibilities beyond just themselves. And then what scouting does in the outdoor program is that the older scout becomes responsible for that slightly younger scout and helps to teach him. And we all know from our own experience, when you learn to do something, it's really when you go and show someone else how to do that you really fully grasp and understand that, and you get that shared sense of accomplishment of passing that skill along to someone else. And we do that throughout the outdoor program. So boys get to go camping. They'll go out to camp for a week at a time, and then beyond that, They'll go camping in the mountains. The Boy Scouts of America has a ranch that's 51 square miles in northeast New Mexico called Philmont. And every year, in fact, Buffalo, we send one of the largest groups from the eastern U.S. out to Philmont every year. We'll have over 100 scouts and adults that will go out, and they're camping in the Rocky Mountains. They've got everything they need is on their back, and they carry their food from site to site, and they're doing exciting things. They're rock climbing. They are getting to pan for gold in some places, learn about the culture of the American West. But folded in all of that is a young man is leading that group, and he's responsible for the slightly younger men that are scouts in his patrol or in his troop. And it's through that activity of leading that young man grows and helps the other young men grow. And that really is the kernel of the idea that was the founding of scouting that we carry forward today.
Well, that's definitely the goal. All these activities lead in one direction, and that is to come up with a gentleman who's versed in getting by on his own and being self-sufficient, and also somebody who's got the right values, somebody who understands brotherhood and integrity. And Demone, in the city, there's a lot of, as we talked about earlier, there's a lot of challenges with crime, with drugs that are kind of pulling kids in the wrong direction. How do we go about making a change there? I mean, we've talked about getting the civic leaders involved, and we talked about parents not necessarily having the time or money to kind of help out. Is there an answer? Is there something that we can do in the city?
And Russ talked about it. The big focus of scouting is mentorship, because you spend in 2-3 hours a week with a group of young men. And so we need just dads just to dedicate 2-3 hours out of the week. I do it out of my schedule, and my schedule can be very busy, but I dedicate that time. And we got a bunch of dads who do the same thing, and they dedicate 2-3 hours, and they make themselves available to other young men who may not have a dad around, or they may just have a dad, but they want them involved with other young men. Other young men like to hang out with other young men in the environment where you're learning. And like Russ talked about, it's taking them from the levels of being very close to the mom or the family to eventually being independent and running their own program. Because at the end of the day, like, we have an urban camp out over at St. Martin de Porres. And so we done it for about 6 years now. And so all we have to do is just be there. And the boys set up the whole camp. They put up the tents. They set up the kitchen. They put everything together. And we just have to be there just to make sure nothing happens, but they do it all. And they talk about what they want to have at the camp, who they want to invite, and it's their program. And so they feel really good about themselves and saying, hey, look, this is what we do. And they invite other young men to come in and say, wow, you guys really do that? And in those camps, we teach them respect for tools. They learn how to use axes, knives, tie ropes, know how to use air guns. They learn it all. And as well as being outside and putting that Nintendo down or that PlayStation down and being out in the wilderness. And I tell you
That's
this
big.
much.
That's big.
And I say this, and I challenge anybody to this. If something ever happens in the United States where the power goes out and it's a serious situation, you're going to want to scout in your family.
Absolutely. Okay, that's all for this segment. We'll be back to wrap up shortly.